Hello everyone, and welcome to part 1 of Ash's Alola Journey Rewrite. This is a rewrite series by me, Sakura, and you guys actually chose that name, so thank you so much for that. And this series is one that I've been working on for quite a while. I mentioned months ago that I was going to do a series very similar to my current Galar series, where I rewrite the entirety of Sun and Moon. It's not like Galar because, of course, I'm writing Galar from the ground up since Ash didn't have a traditional journey in Galar. But he did have a journey. Well, he went to Alola. Did he have a journey in Alola? I don't think so. For me, Alola was the sit at Kukui's house and in Kukui's classroom series. But let's not dwell too much on that. Regardless, I have mentioned before that I didn't like the Sun and Moon anime really at all, because I just loved Alola as a region so much. I loved the Sun and Moon games so much, and it just really saddened me that we didn't get an anime really focusing on Alola as a region, as a culture. We just sat in at Kukui's classroom on Melemele for the entire series, which just disappointed me so much. I really feel like I just don't understand to this day why Ash couldn't travel around Alola. Why they decided to have him sit at a school. Since when has Ash ever cared about school and learning and being stuck in one place? Ash just felt so out of character throughout the entirety of... Well, I'm not going to say the entirety of Sun and Moon. I mean, if there is one thing I like about Sun and Moon, I like that they really made Ash feel like a 10-year-old kid again. You know, I mean, Ash's personality has kind of rotated throughout the entire show, but I really do like that aspect of Sun and Moon. They really made Ash feel like just a little 10-year-old kid again, and I like that, but even with that, I just feel like, on that same note, what 10-year-old kid wants to sit around at school? Especially a 10-year-old kid in the Pokemon world. You're telling me Ash wants to sit around at school all day instead of exploring this brand new region with all these Pokemon he's never seen before? Sorry, but no, I just didn't like that. I just couldn't get behind it, and I did not like Sun and Moon as a series. So that's why I'm going to be rewriting the entirety of Sun and Moon here on this channel in a brand new series. This series won't be like the Galar series where I just upload parts randomly every so often. I really want this series to be more scheduled. My goal is for this series to be quarterly, so every 3 months I hope to have another video out, because I'm going to be doing these videos in really large chunks. I want to focus on pretty much every single island in its entirety. So this video is going to be the entirety of Melemele, the next one will be the entirety of Akala, so on and so forth, and then of course we'll have to do videos focusing on, you know, Aether Foundation and Ultra Beast, and then of course the League. So those will all be their own videos. I plan on doing them, like I said, quarterly. I hope I can really stick to that because I do have more videos and series coming up. But I at the very least hope I can stick to that schedule. If not, of course, I'll always let you guys know. But yes, that's pretty much the backstory behind this series. So again, long story short, I wasn't the biggest fan of Sun and Moon, so that's why I'm doing this rewrite. So this rewrite will be very different from Sun and Moon, the actual anime. If you're a fan of Pokemon the series Sun and Moon, I'm gonna warn you right now that this series will probably pretty much have nothing from that series because I just really didn't like it that much at all. So this one will be very different. But that doesn't mean you can't watch, you know, you might end up enjoying it, I don't know. But now with that very long introduction out of the way, please enjoy this rewrite. Let's get into the video. Our story begins as Ash heads to Alola with Delia for a vacation to celebrate his Kalos League victory. Yes, for anyone who hasn't seen part 1 of my Sword and Shield series, I said that in that video in my Sakura Extended Universe that Ash won the Kalos League. And that also means, yes, this series is the prequel to that series. And yeah, it means that you also know the results of the endgame here, but I mean, if you watch the actual Sun and Moon series, you also know, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, our story begins in the middle of Ash and Delia's vacation. At this point, they've been in Alola for around a month, with only a few vacation days left. Ash and Delia have spent almost every day at the beach in Howley City, and this day was no different. Around noontime, Delia was starting to feel a bit hungry and mentioned to Ash that she'd seen a fruit stand nearby. Ash of course decides to run off to the fruit stand to grab something for everyone to eat. Delia tells Ash to make sure he doesn't get lost, with Ash reassuring her that everything will be fine. Ash runs down the street eagerly searching for this fruit stand, but doesn't have much luck. He ends up getting so focused on looking around for the fruit stand that he doesn't pay attention to what is right in front of him, leading him to crash into someone. Ash winds up knocking the person onto the ground, and upon realizing this, he profusely apologizes. Ash looks over at the person he hit, and it turns out to be a young boy. The boy says it's no big deal, and that everything is well. Ash introduces himself and the boy does as well, stating that his name is Hao. Ash tells Hao that he hoped he didn't interrupt anything important, and Hao responds saying that he wasn't in a rush, he was just on the way to get his very first Pokemon. Naturally, Ash is excited by this, as he realizes that he actually hadn't seen too many Pokemon yet, since he and his mom have just been spending all of their time at the beach. And now, Ash is really interested in seeing what Pokemon Hao could be choosing from. He asks Hao if he can tag along, and he says sure. Pikachu reminds Ash that his mom is waiting on them, but Ash insists to his best friend that they shouldn't be long. Besides, his mom is probably enjoying having some alone time. Pikachu shrugs, not able to do much else, so Ash and Hao head to Iki Town. Along the way, Ash and Hao begin conversing, where they learn that Hao's grandfather Hala will be the one giving him his first Pokemon. Ash asks Hao if he's a new trainer, which Hao confirms. He asks Ash if he's a new trainer as well, but Ash states that he isn't. In fact, he just recently won a league tournament in Kalos and was simply vacationing with his mom. Hao is quite impressed, as he can't imagine ever winning a league, especially since Alola doesn't have its own league, a fact which shocks Ash. He's never been to a region without a league. Hao asks Ash if this means he is a champion, but Ash explains that he isn't, as he only won the league conference, but did not manage to defeat Kalos' Elite Four or champion. Hao again expresses his interest, since Alola doesn't have its own champion either. In fact, there's been some talk by a few locals on if they should have one, and if so, who it should be. Ash asks Hao what Alola does have, if they don't have a league or champion. Hao states that Alola has its own cultural tradition, the Island Challenge, and says that his grandfather can tell him everything about it since he's an expert. Ash becomes even more eager to get to Iki Town, so the two dash off. Eventually, the two make it to Iki Town. Yeah, they got there fast. But the problem is that upon looking around, Hala isn't there. Hao mentions that his grandfather is probably just on the way, and that they can just wait for him, so he decides to give Ash a small tour around the place. Ash points out the interesting looking statues around the area, and Hao mentions that they lead to the Mahalo Trail. While looking up the pathway, they notice someone down there, which Hao finds odd as he rarely sees people back there. In fact, most of the townsfolk are encouraged to stay away from the area, as there are rumors of dangerous, powerful Pokemon lurking around. Usually, only the strongest trainers in the region venture to the end of the trail. Suddenly, Pikachu jumps off of Ash's shoulder and runs over to the person, who continues down the trail. Ash calls him, but he doesn't listen. With no choice, he and Hao make chase. Pikachu and the boys run all the way to the ends of the trail. Eventually, the person, who is actually a young girl clutching a large bag, stops in front of a bridge, and she is clearly in distress. Pikachu notices the bag and calls out to her. The young girl looks back at the small electric mouse, and just then, a weird Pokemon shoots out of her bag and hovers over the bridge. At this moment, a group of flying-type Pokemon come out of nowhere and begin to surround and attack the Pokemon. The girl begins to freak out, and Ash and Hao eventually reach the girl and Pikachu. Hao asks what is going on. The nervous girl introduces herself as Lily and begs Ash and Hao to save her Pokemon, who is being brutally attacked. Ash immediately rushes over without even thinking too much and runs to the crowd of Pokemon. He's able to fight through the commotion and grab the Pokemon that is being attacked. However, the rickety and unstable bridge actually collapses under Ash's weight. Lily, Hao, and Pikachu look on helplessly in shock as Ash falls with the Pokemon in his arms. But out of nowhere, another Pokemon swoops down and saves Ash, dropping him off next to Hao and Lily. The children stare in awe at the impressive creature. Hao looks at the Pokemon intensely, believing he recognizes it, but doesn't say much, especially since the Pokemon flies off after setting Ash down. Lily thanks Ash profusely and explains that this Pokemon is called Nebby. Ash and Hao are both curious about it, but Lily tells them to be careful because Nebby can't control its powers and often causes trouble, hence why she keeps it in her bag. Hao wonders why she doesn't just use a Pokeball, but Lily says that Nebby is a very special Pokemon and requires a special Pokeball, which she doesn't have. This response only gives Hao more questions, but Ash not so much. He simply admires how cool Nebby looks. Pikachu calls out to Ash and he notices that he's holding a strange sparkling stone. Ash takes the stone, wondering where it came from. Hao says that it looks familiar, though he's not sure where he'd seen it. Ash shrugs and simply places the object in his bag. Lily once again thanks Ash and Hal for helping her, and the three of them decide to head back to Iki Town. After leaving the Mahalo Trail, Hal notices his grandfather standing in the center of Iki Town, and he was actually accompanied by a younger man and a girl. Hal introduces Ash to Hala, noting that he's the recent Kalos League winner. Hala, meanwhile, introduces the other people as Professor Kukui and Celine, a new trainer. Kukui greets Lily in surprise, stating that he'd been wondering where she'd run off to. The boys are understandably confused as Lily explains that she actually already knows Kukui, as she is his research assistant. Hala meanwhile explains that Celine is a student of the Melemele Pokemon School, who graduated earlier today, and Kukui requested that she get her first Pokemon as a reward for having the highest grades in his class. Lily then realizes that she recognizes Celine, having seen her a few times at the school, and Celine tells Lily that she remembers her due to her very unique and pretty outfit. Hala asks Hal if he wouldn't mind Celine choosing her first Pokemon with him, and Hal is of course fine, eager to see what each of them choose. Everyone, including some of the nearby residents, gather around as Hala sends out 3 Pokemon. These Pokemon are Rowlet, Litten, and Popplio, and Hala lets the kids know that they can choose whichever one they want. Rowlet looks around at everyone and lets out a yawn, clearly not too interested in the situation, and closes its eyes for a nap. Litten glares at the surrounding crowd and begins grooming its fur, also seemingly bored. Popplio, on the other hand, appears thrilled to see a crowd. It immediately begins creating water bubble balloons, creating a show for everyone. It bounces on the balloons, earning cheers from the small audience. Celine immediately falls for Popplio, thinking it is adorable and has a great personality. Hal, on the other hand, looks at the sleepy-looking Rowlet and appreciates its laid-back nature, stating that he's just the same. So, Hal chooses Rowlet and Celine takes Popplio. Curious, Lily then asks what will happen to Litten, and Kukui says that he can take it back to the lab and wait for another trainer to take it. Meanwhile, Hala asks Celine if she'll be taking on the island challenge. Celine seems to become slightly nervous, but she says that she will definitely be taking on the challenge. Ash remembers that Hal briefly mentioned the challenge earlier, and asks what the island challenge truly is. Kukui then explains the 4 islands of Alola, and how trainers usually travel across the islands to take on tasks known as island trials. The trials are all run by specific chosen individuals, called trial captains, and all differ from location to location. He explains that the trials end after challenging a totem Pokemon, a very strong, powerful Pokemon, and its allies. After completing every trial on an island, the challenger must then battle the island's most powerful trainer, known as the Island Kahuna. Hal then states that Hala is the Kahuna of Melemele Island. Ash is immediately intrigued and states that he definitely wants to take on the island challenge, and asks if he is able to, being that he isn't from Alola. Hala says that anyone can take on the challenge, and that Ash should totally go for it if he wants to. Hal even says that it would be great if all of them traveled together to take on the island challenge together. And this is an idea even Celine agrees with. She says that the idea sounds great, she just needs to let her parents know. Wait, parents? In that moment, Ash realizes that it is nearly nighttime, and he'd forgotten all about the reason he'd gone off in the first place, to get some fruit for his mom. She definitely won't be happy when he gets back. Ash, Hal, Hala, and Kukui wind up accompanying Ash to the beach, where shockingly, Delia was still waiting for Ash, while also soaking up those rays. Well, not anymore since it's now nighttime, but anyway, everyone explains what happened and how Ash became majorly sidetracked, and they all apologize. Surprisingly, Delia isn't even all too upset, as a kind person had sold her some lunch soon after Ash left. She actually planned on sending Mimey after him, but she figured Ash wouldn't be gone for that long anyway. And eventually, she ended up falling asleep. In fact, she'd only just recently woken up. Everyone is quite stunned to hear all of this, but are happy that Delia wasn't upset. In fact, she's actually fine with Ash planning to head on to this new journey, as she figured she wouldn't be able to keep him resting for too long. Right now, she's just happy that they had an entire month to spend together. Hala decides to invite Ash and Delia to their festival tomorrow, where they will honor the island guardian Tapu Koko. Ash wonders what Tapu Koko is, and Hal gasps out of nowhere. He's finally remembered. He explains that Tapu Koko is the Pokemon they saw earlier that day, which rescued them. Hala had told him about it before, but he'd never actually seen it in person. Ash wonders how on earth Hal could forget something like that, but Hal argues that he was so surprised to see the island guardian up close that he almost didn't believe it was even real. Pikachu then speaks up, gesturing to Ash's backpack. And Ash remembers the sparkling stone he found and asks if Hala knows what it is. Hala is surprised to see it and says that Kakunas use that stone to create special items called Z-Rings for trainers participating in the Island Challenge. He knows that he can fix it up and give it to Ash at the festival, which Ash agrees to. He's very excited to get such a very special gift, but asks what a Z-Ring is and what it's used for. Hala says he thinks it's best left a surprise and he'll see it in person at the festival. Later that evening, Ash and Delia arrive at the festival. Hal, Celine, and Lily immediately run over to Ash upon seeing him. The Litten from yesterday is also there, with Lily explaining that Kukui thought he'd bring it along to get some fresh air. The Litten greets Ash and Pikachu, remembering them from the day before, though it still seems pretty aloof. Nevertheless, Ash picks it up and begins to nuzzle the adorable Pokemon. The kids talk for a little while, and Hala then announces that there will be a special battle between Celine and Hal, the newest trainers to receive a Pokemon from him, and who will be taking on the Island Challenge. Celine groans quietly, which Lily notices. She asks Celine if she is okay, but Celine claims she is fine, just a bit nervous. Lily feels there's more to it, but she encourages Celine, telling her that she's sure she'll win the battle. Celine thanks her and walks off, still looking upset. Lily doesn't ask anything further, but wonders what could be bothering Celine. Hala stands on the edge of the battlefield as the referee. Ash and Lily watch from the sidelines as Celine and Hal begin their battle of Popplio versus Rowlet. Hal commands a leafage, which does heavy damage to Popplio. Celine tells Popplio to use Water Gun. The attack lands but does very little damage. Hal has Rowlet go for a peck, but Popplio dodges it, so Hal tells Rowlet to use leafage again. Celine panics and tells Popplio to create a water balloon. The small sea lion creates a large water balloon just in time to act as a protective barrier. Ash and Lily are shocked by how strong a water balloon was at blocking a grass-type move. Hal decides to command Peck to burst the balloon. Celine smiles at this, as this is what she wanted. She tells Popplio to jump onto the balloon. As Rowlet closes in, Celine orders an icy wind. Everyone is shocked and surprised by this, but before anyone can react, Rowlet is hit with a blast of freezing cold winds, knocking him out. So despite the type disadvantage, Celine actually comes out on top. She cheers and runs over to hug Popplio. Hal runs over to Rowlet and asks if he's okay. The bird shakes itself off and nods. Happy that his new Pokemon is okay, Hal compliments Celine on how great her battling is. He states that she'll have no issue with the Island Challenge if she can so easily beat a Pokemon that her own has a type disadvantage against. Celine nervously agrees, which again Lily picks up on. Ash, on the other hand, was simply enamored by the Alola starters and wants to catch some new Pokemon as soon as possible. He looks over to Hala, who seems somewhat disappointed. Perhaps he was hoping his grandson would win? Ash decides to run over and ask if he's alright. Hala states that he's fine. He simply wished his grandson was a better battler. He'd never been all too competitive, but he was sure he'd win a battle where he had the type advantage. Though sadly, no such luck. Hala actually confides in Ash that he's happy that Ash is traveling with Hal, as a very strong trainer like him who was able to win the Kalos League and his eagerness to take on the Island Challenge might give Hal someone to compete with. With all that being said and done, Hala announces to the other children to join them. As they gather around, Hala gives Ash his new Z-Ring, which he crafted from the sparkling stone. He also gives Z-Rings to Hal, Celine, and Lily, stating that the stone was actually large enough that he could make 4 Z-Rings. Lily questions why she would need one, and Hala simply mentions that she may as well have one just in case. And with this, Ash asks what Z-Rings are used for, and Hala decides to finally explain. He explains that the combination of a Z-Ring and a special object called a Z-Crystal allows Pokemon to use extremely powerful attacks called Z-Moves. Ash is of course intrigued and asks how he can get a Z-Crystal and use Z-Moves. Hala tells him that he can get Z-Crystals by taking part in the Island Challenge, of course, as many of the totem Pokemon he'll be facing in his trials guard them. Ash becomes even more excited to take on his first trial. But before they head off, Hala gives Ash, Hal, and Celine their island amulets, officially recognizing them as Island Challenge participants. Kukui then gives them a Rotom Pokédex and wishes them well on the island challenge. He recommends them checking out the trainer school if they need help, but note that with Celine traveling with them, it shouldn't be necessary. And with that, the trainers prepare to head off the next morning. While on the road, Celine asks Lily if she is taking on the island challenge, and she responds that she isn't. She's actually trying to do research on Nebby, and that was the reason she was working as Kukui's assistant, adding in that she should probably be heading back there anyway. Hal becomes a bit down hearing this, and says he hoped Lily would travel with them. Lily responds that she'd rather not, as she wouldn't want to slow them down. She feels she'd be of no help to the island challenge, or anything really. But Ash says that she'd make a great addition, being a professor's assistant, as she'd likely know more information about the islands and the Pokemon of Alola than they would. Celine and Hal agree, especially since they are new trainers and find it beneficial to travel with someone who has a lot of Pokemon information. Though Lily still feels unsure, she quietly thinks it over for a moment, and with all the convincing, Lily agrees to join them. After all, maybe traveling with them can help her learn more about Nebby, learn more about a strange world, and those other strange creatures. So our traveling group will be Ash, Celine, Hal, and Lily. Let's see how these kids handle the island challenge. The group decides to actually visit the Pokemon school, with Hal and Ash being curious about the classes held there. Lily sees no harm in visiting, and Celine believes it would be fun to show the others around the school. While on the road, naturally the group encounters many wild Pokemon, most of which Ash has never seen before. Celine brings up the idea of everyone catching some Pokemon, since they'll likely be battling other trainers at the school. Battling? Hal asks curiously. Yes, Celine says. Pokemon battles are pretty much a constant at the Pokemon school. The school has a lot of rental Pokemon that the students are free to use for practice battles, and I used to participate in multiple battles every day. So that's how you had such an easy time battling me, Hal exclaims. And Celine nods. So everyone agrees that they should make some captures, and Lily pulls something out of her bag. It turns out to be a case full of many different types of Pokeballs. She mentions how Kukui always encouraged her to try out different Pokeballs, since they can have unique benefits, and now seems like a great time to use them. Ash, Hal, and Celine gladly grab a bunch and thank Lily. The quartet decides to split up for a bit. Ash winds up encountering a lot of wild Pokemon, but fails to catch any of them, with many able to escape battles quickly. Celine likewise struggles, also being unable to catch any Pokemon. Hal actually comes across a wild Pichu, and successfully captures it with a nest ball. He decides to catch it, thinking Ash's Pikachu was really cool, and he'd like to have a similar strong Pokemon. Lily, meanwhile, doesn't even try to catch any Pokemon, something the others notice. Hal ends up being the one to question her on why she isn't trying to catch anything, but she simply states that she needs to focus on Nebby, so she shouldn't be worrying about any other Pokemon right now. Hal isn't sure he believes this answer, but he lets her be. Ash, meanwhile, becomes discouraged over not making any captures. He is just about to give up before Pikachu calls out to him. He notices something rustling in the grass. Ash commands a Thunderbolt, and the Pokemon in the grass winds up narrowly dodging the attack. Ash is about to call out another attack, but right before he does, the Pokemon reveals itself. It turns out to be Litten. Ash and Pikachu recognize it as the same Litten from Hala, the one Kukui had kept. Ash questions Litten on why he isn't with Kukui right now, and even offers to bring him back to Iki Town. But the Litten actually responds by using his tail to smack something over to Ash. It turns out to be a Pokeball, which Ash assumes is Litten's. Ash asks Litten what is going on, and in that moment, Hal, Lily, and Celine run over. They too are shocked to see Litten, and Lily asks if it got lost. Litten shakes his head and simply nudges his Pokeball to Ash. Celine says it seems clear that Litten wants to go with Ash. He asks Litten if that's true, and Litten just nods his head, not showing much emotion. Ash is still a tad confused, but Hal encourages Ash to make the capture, especially since it means all the Pokemon from his grandfather will be able to travel together. Ash agrees that this would be nice, and returns Litten to his Pokeball, solidifying him as his first capture. That said, he figures he should contact Kukui with the Rotom Pokédex to explain the situation. Kukui is relieved to see the group found Litten, as he had actually just vanished from his home and Kukui had been out looking for him for hours. Ash apologizes for not realizing sooner. Kukui says that Litten must have felt left out over not being picked by Hal or Celine, but felt too reserved to ask Ash to keep him back then. Kakui says that he's happy that Litten decided to go with Ash, as he feels he'll be a good trainer to him. With the professor's approval, the group gets back on the road. The gang makes it to the trainer school, where they are challenged by many of the students, but they all wind up winning their battles. The teacher says that with their strength, they should fare well with the Melemele Island trial. She then advises them to go through Hau'oli City to reach the trial site on the other side of the island. Ash is of course already very well acquainted with this city, having spent a month vacationing at the beach nearby. But what he isn't acquainted with are the odd-looking gangsters who approach them when they arrive, pointing out the amulets on their bags. They introduce themselves as Team Skull and claim that they hate trainers participating in the Island Challenge. Celine asks why, and the goons simply state that their boss has his own issues with the challenge, and so they do as well. Ash tells them that what they're saying sounds ridiculous, and that they should respect their region's cultural challenge, but they angrily disagree. They even go as far as to challenge all of them to a battle, telling them that they should give up on the Island Challenge if they lose. There are 4 Team Skull grunts, so each of them challenges one of the kids. But the grunts are prepared to not battle fairly, as all of them send out multiple Pokemon. Ash knows that this isn't fair, especially since Lily doesn't have any Pokemon who can battle, since Nebby can't control its power. He's just about to offer Pikachu to battle on her behalf, but the Team Skull grunt threatens to take her bag, as she thinks it may be full of Z crystals, or maybe even a rare Pokemon. They demand that she hand over the bag, and of course this frightens Lily, to the point that she pulls out a few Pokeballs and says that she can battle. The others are shocked, as they didn't know Lily even had other Pokemon, but nevertheless, they all enter battle. Lily sends out her Clefairy, Alolan Vulpix, and Alolan Sandshrew, and she easily defeats many of the grunt's Pokemon. Actually, even How's inexperienced Pichu is able to beat many of the opposing Zubat. Ash and Celine also effortlessly deal with the rest of the grunt's Pokemon, with Popplio and Litten defeating many Pokemon with ease. It seems clear that despite being big talkers, Team Skull is pretty weak. And with all the grunts defeated, they all run off and claim that the kids haven't seen the last of them, and that they'll definitely see them again, especially if they decide to take on the island trials. After that oddness, everyone congratulates each other, with Hao questioning Lily where she got her Pokemon and why she never mentioned having any before. Lily nervously answers that she caught them a while ago, back home, and that she didn't really mention them because it never came up in conversation. Nevertheless, she introduces them to the others as Cleffy, Snowy, and Sandy. Hearing their names intrigues Celine. "You give your Pokemon names?" she asks. "Oh yes, it's so I can differentiate my Pokemon from other trainers. Plus, it makes them feel special to me." Celine is stunned by this, as she'd never even considered giving her own Pokemon names. She looks down at her little Popplio, curious if she would want her own nickname. Before anyone can say anything else, a man approaches the group and introduces himself as Alima. He tells them how he saw their encounter and tells them that Team Skull are always running around, causing a ruckus, but are typically harmless and not to worry too much about them. He says that he hopes they didn't interrupt them in the middle of something important, but Hao says that they weren't in any rush. Celine adds that they were on the way to the Melemele Island trial for the Island Challenge. Alima then informs them that he is the trial captain of the island, and he can direct them to their first trial at the Verdant Cavern. Lily notes that it was great that they ran into each other. Alima inputs the location on Ash's Rotom Pokédex, which guides them to the location. Along the way, the trainers start discussing what they think the trial will be like. Ash wonders if it'll be anything like a gym battle. This confuses the others, as they aren't too familiar with Pokemon gyms, so they ask Ash what they are like. Ash explains them, and Hao says that based on everything his grandfather had ever told him, island trials didn't really sound similar to gym battles. He always described them as natural battles occurring in special places in Alola. This only makes Ash even more excited to actually take on a trial. The kids eventually come across Melemele Meadow. Seeing the beautiful flowers, Celine definitely wants to go in there and take some pictures with the Rotom Pokédex. Ash doesn't want to get distracted, but Hao and Lily insist that it won't be a big deal to take a short detour, especially since they can find new Pokemon inside. Ash begrudgingly accepts the group decision, relenting that it would be nice to look for some more new Pokemon. Unfortunately, while in the meadow, Nebby actually bursts out of Lily's bag and flies off again, and the gang has to find it. They decide to split up to look for it more easily. While searching through the meadow for Nebby, Celine comes across an adorable Pokemon fluttering about, a cutie fly. She uses Popplio to battle it and catches it easily in a netball. She thanks Popplio for helping her make the capture, but stops just short of saying the word Popplio. She thinks for a second before asking, "Hey Popplio, would you like a name?" Poplio nods her head and happily claps her flippers, which to Celine sounds like a yes. Celine does end up stopping to take some pictures, while also searching for Nebby, of course, where she also finds a Pokemon dancing in the middle of the meadow. The Pokédex identifies it as an Oricorio. Poplio sees this Pokemon dancing and actually joins in the performance. Celine thinks the two Pokemon look adorable together, so she decides to ask Oricorio if it would like to come along with her, since it had befriended her Poplio, and the bird agrees. Celine pulls out a Premier Ball and catches the Oricorio, giving her 2 captures. So, since Sun and Moon were the first games where we saw NPCs use different Pokeballs, I thought I'd do so here. We even saw a bit of this in the actual anime, plus I just think it's more interesting, so we'll be seeing lots of different Pokeballs used by our cast. Meanwhile, Hao ends up locating Nebby, and Lily puts it back in her bag. She graciously thanks him and tells Nebby to please stay in the bag. Ash, starting to become impatient, decides that they should get going and head to the Verdant Cavern. Hao then notices that Celine isn't back yet, but right at that moment, she rejoins them with her new captures. Everyone is naturally excited to see the new Pokemon, and Hao congratulates her on the captures. Celine introduces her Cutiefly as Honey, and her Oricorio as Meadow. The others are surprised to hear the new captures introduced with names. Lily asks if she did it because of what she said earlier. Celine says that she took what Lily said to heart, and felt that her Pokemon deserved nicknames, since she wanted them to feel special to her. Hao asks, what about Poplio? Celine responds that she gave Poplio a nickname too, Ariel. Lily tells Celine that she feels honored that she helped her to make this decision, and with that, the group head off. After the long detour, the group eventually makes it to the cavern, where Alola is already there waiting. Lily apologizes for the delay, and states that it was her fault that they were late. Alola tells them that it's no issue and there's no need to be concerned. He lets them know that once they enter the cavern, the trial will begin. Once completed, the challenger will then be able to challenge the totem Pokemon. He asks who out of the group would like to go first, and Celine is shocked, as she thought they'd all be able to challenge it at the same time. Hao explains that his grandfather taught him that the trials can only be done one trainer at a time, since it is an individual rite of passage for the trainer to face the totem without assistance. Alola confirms this to be true, but states that the others are free to join the challenger through the cavern if they please, so long as they don't attempt to participate in the trial. Ash immediately challenges Hao, saying that they can battle to decide who goes first. But Hao surprises Ash by saying that he's fine with Ash doing the trial first, since he was so excited to do an island trial. Ash asks if he's sure, and Hao insists. So, with that, Ash is up first. Alola explains that this trial is simple. Ash simply needs to clear out the young goose in the area. Ash looks up what a young goose is on his Rotom Pokédex, and with the new knowledge, he heads into the Verdant Cavern, with the others following slightly behind. Despite this being his first trial, Ash doesn't have many issues. Most of the wild young goose are easily defeated by Litten. Ash has already taken a few down, and is getting deeper and deeper into the cavern. Things are looking good until the trainers are yelled at by a random voice. They all look around, confused as to who else could be in the cavern. After all, Alola didn't mention another challenger being in there. Pikachu screams out, and Ash and the gang just narrowly avoid a sludge bomb. They all look up and see a couple of Team Skullgrunts standing up ahead. Hao demands to know what they're doing, and the Skullgrunts say that they warned them that they'd be back to mess up their island challenge. They challenge Ash to a battle to disrupt his trial. Ash is just about to strike back with Pikachu, but Celine stops him. She tells him that he needs to conserve Pikachu and Litten's strength for the totem Pokemon, and she'll handle the grunts. Lily and Hao agree. The grunts reject this, stating that they're specifically there to stop Ash. One of the grunts tells her Alolan Grimer to attack Ash with Sludge, but Lily sends out Sandy to intercept the attack, taking no damage due to being a Steel type. Celine sends out Ariel to trap the grunts and their Pokemon in water balloons, which she does successfully. With their opponents unable to move, Hao tells Ash to keep going ahead. Ash thanks his friends and continues on. Once Ash is out of sight, Hao, Lily, and Celine send out all the rest of their Pokemon. Rowlet pops the balloons, sending Team Skull and their Pokemon to the ground. Even though they're surrounded, the grunts still attempt to fight back with everything they can. Meadow easily defeats numerous Zubat with Revelation Dance. Hal's Pichu takes out some Alola and Rattata with Rowlet's assistance, and Lily's Sandy and Snowy freeze the remaining Yungoos solid, rendering them unable to battle. The grunts are backed into a corner. Celine demands that they leave now, and with the grunts having no Pokemon who can fight, they call back their Pokemon and run off. But once again, they let them know that they'll be back. Celine wonders what Team Skull have against Island Challengers, but Lily tells her that they should try to catch up to Ash. So she agrees, and they all head off. At this point, Ash has nearly made it to the end of Verdant Cavern. There, he's battling a Gumshoos. Pikachu had taken some heavy damage, but finished off the evolved Pokemon with an Iron Tail. Ash compliments Pikachu, telling him that he's sure they've got to be close to the end. The two eventually make it to the Totem's Den, where Ash looks around, but he doesn't see anything. He starts to wonder if he made it to the right place or a dead end. Pikachu chirps, and Ash spots what looks to be a pedestal. But before he can even investigate it, the giant Totem Gumshoos appears. Ash is stunned by the size of the Pokemon, as it towers over the Gumshoos he just battled. In addition, the Pokemon has a bright golden ore around it. So this is the Totem Pokemon? Ash wonders. Okay, Litten, you're up. Ash sends out Litten, who ignites a small fire on his back. The Totem Pokemon charges in for a Super Fang, which does heavy damage to Litten. Ash tells Litten to use Ember. The attack hits Gumshoos directly in the face, leaving it with a burn. This seems to anger the Totem, who lets out a loud roar. Ash orders a second Ember, but before it can execute the attack, a Yungoos comes out of nowhere and attacks Litten. The small kitten is knocked back. Ash is confused by this and yells that it was unfair. From behind him, Ash hears Howl's voice call out to him. Ash, that's the Totem Pokemon's ally. It will join the fight and they must both be defeated to complete the trial. Alright, well then, Pikachu. No! How stops him. You can only use one Pokemon at a time. Those are the rules of the Island Challenge Totem Battle. Really? Oh man. The Yungoos and Gumshoos charge in for another attack. Ash tells Litten to use Ember on the Yungoos. The attack successfully pushes the Pokemon back, but it does nothing to hinder Gumshoos, who lands a strong bite. The burn lessens the damage, allowing Litten to stay standing, but he wobbles on his feet. Ash knows he won't be able to keep going at this rate. He has Litten use another Ember, aimed at Gumshoos. The Totem Gumshoos seemingly commands the Yungoos to take the attack. The small Pokemon tackles straight through the attack and knocks Litten out. Ash calls Litten back, telling him that he had agreed, and sends in Pikachu. Ash orders a Thunderbolt on Yungoos, and the Pokemon is taken down instantly. Even the Totem looks shocked by this, and goes in for a Super Fang. Ash has Pikachu dodge and aim an Iron Tail straight at Gumshoos' legs. The attack lands and Gumshoos topples to the ground. Ash orders an Electro Ball, dealing major damage to the weakened Pokemon. It has to be close to fainting by now, Celine thinks. Ash seemingly agrees. He commands one last Thunderbolt, and Pikachu defeats the giant Pokemon. Ash celebrates his win, as do his friends, who run over to him. Pikachu points over to the pedestal they'd seen upon walking in. Ash walks over to it and finds a strange-looking object. He picks it up, and Lily tells him that it's a Z crystal, specifically a Normalium Z. Hal shows Ash how to fit the Z crystal into his Z ring, which will allow him to use Z moves. Lily explains that in order to use a specific Z move, a Pokemon must know a move of the corresponding type, so a Pokemon with a normal type move will be able to use the normal type Z move. Wow, so all of my Pokemon can use lots of different types of Z moves, right? Ash asks. Yeah, so once you get more, you'll have to choose wisely which to use in battle, Hal says. At that, Alima joins the group at the back of the cavern. So Ash, looks like you won your totem battle and got your Z crystal, right? Yep, Ash responds. Then, in that case, you're now free to take on the Island Kahuna Hala for your Grand Trial. Grand Trial? Elima explains that the Grand Trial refers to the battle between the Island Challenger and the Island's Kahuna, once they beat every trial on the island. Melemele only has this one, so Ash can now battle Hala in a Grand Trial. Ash is excited by this, but Lily interrupts him, wondering about Celine and Hal. After all, they still need to challenge the totem, but Ash already defeated it. Elima tells them not to worry. If they really are in a hurry, the Verdant Cavern actually has a second totem that appears at night, which Hal or Celine can challenge. Then by morning, Totem Gumshoos will probably be ready for another challenger, and whoever is left can challenge it. This surprises even Hal, who'd never known there were multiple totems. Elima tells Celine and Hal that they're free to choose who will battle which totem as they please, just that they must follow the same rules given to Ash. With that, Elima tells Ash that he can return to Iki Town to challenge Hala whenever he is ready, and heads off. Lily tells Ash that he should head to a Pokemon Center to heal his Pokemon. Ash doesn't want to leave until Hal and Celine have their battle, but Celine tells the two of them to go, and that they'll stay behind and meet up with them after they battle the totem. Ash is reluctant, but he eventually relents, so he and Lily head off. As nightfall arrives, Hal and Celine are still waiting for the totem to appear. During this time, Celine confides in Hal something she'd been holding on to for a while. What? What do you mean you don't want to take on the Island Challenge? Hal asks. Look, the Island Challenge is cool and all, but it's never been something I wanted to do. Everyone around me has told me I should take part in it ever since I was young, but it's never interested me. So earlier, when you said you were participating, I just said it to get Hala and Kukui off my back. Truthfully, I never intended on taking on the challenge. So Celine, what do you want to do then? Why are you traveling? At first, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and even right now, I'm still not sure what I really want out of my journey, but what? Right now, all I know is that I want to keep traveling with you guys. There's so much I want to see of this region. Even without the Island Challenge, Alola is beautiful, and I want to see more of it. I want to see all the different Pokemon this region offers. I want to grow with my Pokemon in the way I see fit. Hal smiles. Well, Celine, if that's what you want, I'll support you. Honestly, I'm pretty nervous about the Island Challenge myself. Celine asks what he means, and Hal explains that he always felt that he had to have perfect results in the Island Challenge because his grandfather was the island's kahuna. But recently, he'd started to worry that he wouldn't be able to live up to his grandfather's standards. Even now, as they're waiting for the totem, Hal fears losing. I mean, I only have a Rowlet and a Pichu I just caught. How can I hand him a totem Pokemon, let alone my grandfather in a grand trial? Celine can understand Hal's concern. It must be a lot of pressure to have to live up to someone as impressive and respected as an island kahuna. She wonders how she can help. I have an idea. How about you use some of my Pokemon for your trial and kahuna battle? With more Pokemon, you may have a better chance of winning. Really? You do that for me? Sure, she replies. And with that, Celine sends out all of her Pokemon. She explains to all three of them that they'll be battling with Hal for a bit, and that they should be sure to listen to all of his commands. The Pokemon not in agreement, ready to help out their trainer's friend. Right at that moment, Celine and Hal hear shaking in the bushes. Before they can even react, a pair of Alolan Rattata and an Alolan Raticate jump out at them. These must be the Pokemon for the night trial, the Pokemon Hal must defeat in order to challenge the totem. Hal sends out his Rowlet, who can make quick work of the Rattata with Leafage. For the Raticate, he sends out Celine's Oricorio Meadow. The Raticate charges forward for a bite, but Meadow flies out of the way of the attack. Hal tells her to use Air Cutter, though the attack doesn't appear to do much damage to the plump rodent. Raticate uses a Super Fang, which hits hard, but Meadow electrifies the Pokemon with a Revelation Dance, knocking it out. With that, the trial has been completed, meaning only one thing is left. Celine wonders where the totem is, before she remembers. She turns around, and just where Gumshoe stood earlier in the day, Raticate appears from the night. Raticate jumps down in front of the Verdant Cavern pedestal and roars loudly. Now it is time for Hal's totem battle. Meanwhile, Ash and Lily are resting at the Pokemon Center. Ash having healed his Pokemon and now awaiting his grand trial with Hala. He and Lily are outside looking at the night sky, wondering how Celine and Hal are doing. Since it's late and there aren't too many people around, Lily lets Nebby out to play with Pikachu. Lily comments how nice it is to let Nebby free to play with other Pokemon, since it's normally stuck in the bag. She thanks Ash once again for helping to save Nebby in the first place. Ash asks Lily where she got Nebby, as he's never seen a Pokemon like it before. Lily looks nervous, but eventually replies that she isn't sure where Nebby came from. She states that she just came across it randomly one day, and now wants to figure out what it is. Ash gets the idea to try checking out the Rotom Pokédex, but a quick scan yields no results. It's odd, he thinks. How many Pokemon are out there? There are still so many, even the Pokédex doesn't recognize some. Ash, Lily begins, seemingly about to say something important, but before she can continue, both have their eyes torn away from each other and pulled toward the sky. In the sky, something strange is happening. It almost looks like it's tearing, like a hole is tearing into the sky. Both of the trainers are shocked. What on earth is that? It looks like a portal in the middle of the sky or something like that. Ash turns to Lily and asks if she's seeing this as well, but the girl next to him looks frozen with fear. She appears genuinely petrified at the sight in front of her. No, it can't be, she whispers. Lily, do you know what that is? Ash asks. But Lily doesn't move. It's like she's been paralyzed in time and cannot move. Ash's Rotom Pokédex turns around and takes a picture of the strange thing in the sky, while Ash tries to shake Lily out of her trance. Eventually, she snaps out of it and moves normally once more. She looks over to Ash, but isn't able to say a thing before the wormhole disappears. Whoa, what happened there, Lily? What was that? Does that happen often on Alola? Lily, delayed, responds that she's never seen anything like that before. Ash says that she looks so scared, like she'd seen it before. Lily says that she was simply scared because she thought something terrifying might emerge from the portal, but was relieved when nothing came from it. Ash wonders if they should tell Nurse Joy, but Lily says that the Pokemon Center workers are likely busy and that they shouldn't waste their time like that. Ash isn't sure he agrees, but he figures he should trust Lily's judgment. After all, it does seem like it was nothing. Meanwhile, Hao is still in the middle of battling Totem Alolan Raticate. Celine's Oricorio and his own Pichu fought well and took out some of the ally Rattata before falling to the totem. Now Hao is using Celine's Cutie Fly Honey, since she has a type advantage. Her Fairy and Bug type moves are dealing heavy damage to Raticate. Unfortunately, a powerful tackle ends up knocking Honey out as well, but the totem looks to be getting weaker. Surely it has to go down soon. Hao sends in his Rowlet and orders a peck. The giant rat intercepts with a tackle and knocks Rowlet back into a tree. Hao asks if he's okay, and the bird confirms that he can still battle. Hao orders a powerful Razor Leaf, and Rowlet fires a barrage of leaves at the totem. The attack lands a critical hit and takes Raticate down. Hao happily hugs Rowlet and gives Celine a high five. They did it. Totem Raticate was defeated. Hao thanks Celine, letting her know that he could never have won without her Pokemon's help. Celine lets him know that it was no big deal, and that now all he needs to do is have his grand trial against Hala. Hao nods, though he is nervous. He's sure his grandfather won't mind him borrowing a friend's Pokemon for his trial, but he starts to wonder if maybe he should try to win with just his own Pokemon, just to show Hala he can do it. No, it's fine. After all, Celine offered help. Besides, completing the trial is all that matters. It doesn't matter how he does it, so long as he wins and lives up to his grandfather's name through his victory. Hao collects his Normalium Z from the pedestal and the duo exit the Verdant Cavern. The following morning, the group reunites, and Celine explains to Ash and Lily how she actually doesn't want to take part in the island challenge herself, hence why she chose to just help Hao out instead of challenging it herself. Ash is initially surprised, but like Hao, he supports Celine's wishes. He actually thinks it's great that she helped him in his trial the way she did. Lily isn't too surprised. After all, Celine didn't seem all too confident about the trial earlier, but she is curious about one thing. So Celine, what is it that you want to do? She asks. But Celine doesn't really have an answer. She gives the same response that she gave to Hao, that she just wants to explore the beautiful region and see what Alola has to offer. She hopes to figure out what she wants to do through traveling. And with that being said, the next move for the group is to head back to Iki Town for Ash and Hao's grand trials. After a lot of traveling, the group arrives back in civilization. They pass by Kukui at his lab, where they share the good news of their trial victories, and Kukui congratulates them. Ash brings up a strange thing he and Lily saw in the sky, but Kukui says he's not heard of it or seen anything like it before. This slightly disappoints Ash, but he doesn't get too discouraged, as he's more interested in his battle against Hala anyway. Sadly, Kukui informs the group that Hala had to make a quick emergency trip to one of Alola's other islands, Akala, and he won't be back until the next day. Ash is greatly disappointed, but Kukui actually brings up something important. Since they passed their trials, they must now have Z crystals. So he asks Ash if he even knows how to use Z moves. Ash nervously replies that he doesn't, and that he'd actually forgotten about that. Kukui says that it's good that he ran into them and that he can now show them right here, right now. He heads over to an open spot of land and calls out two Pokemon, a Braviary and a Snorlax. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a Z crystal, a Normalium Z. He inserts it into his Z ring and stands firmly behind Braviary. He tells the kids that in order to use a Z move, they need to strike a particular pose in battle. The pose will vary depending on the Z crystal. Kukui then shows them the pose for the normal type Z move, which he tells them is called Breakneck Blitz. They notice that Braviary also strikes the same pose as well with his wings. In an instant, Braviary is surrounded by a bright light and charges forward towards Snorlax at a speed none of the other trainers had ever seen before. Snorlax braces for impact, but Braviary slams into it with an incredibly intense power. The power is strong enough to knock Snorlax off of its feet and into the air. The kids are in awe at such a large Pokemon like Snorlax being sent flying so effortlessly. Ash is completely shocked and wants to use a Z-move as soon as possible. Kukui warns him that Z-moves take a lot of a Pokemon's energy, so he should only use them in major situations. But since they have time before the upcoming match, he can try one out now. Naturally, Ash opts to try the move out with Pikachu, though he makes sure to have his Litten watch so he can see how it's done. Pikachu executes the move perfectly against Braviary, who is also sent flying by the attack. Seeing these powerful moves only makes Ash even more excited for his upcoming battle. With not much to do at the moment, Kukui recommends to the group to check out 10 Carrot Hill, since it's near his lab. They may even find some new Pokemon they can catch. In an instant, Ash forgets all about having to wait on his grand trial, as the thought of finding new Pokemon excites him. So the kids make their way up to 10 Carrot Hill, and while there, they come across a pack of wild Pokemon. The Rotom Pokédex informs the group that these Pokemon are called Rockruff. Hal notices that one of them in particular looks a bit different. Ash, thinking that the Pokemon look cool, goes in for a closer look. One of the Rockruff in particular lunges forward in an attempt to attack Ash, though Pikachu is able to use a Thunderbolt to send Rockruff flying back. The remaining Rockruff dash off in fear. The other Rockruff is dazed, electricity surging through its tiny body, and Ash decides that he wants to catch the Pokemon. But upon reaching into his pocket, he notices that he ran out of Pokeballs earlier and forgot to restock them. He soon becomes disappointed before Celine reminds him of the extra Pokeballs he got from Lily. Additionally, Lily herself explains that a Heal Ball would be great in this situation, as it will cure the Rockruff of its paralysis instantly and fully heal it. Ash nods and pulls out a Heal Ball, which he then tosses at the Rockruff. The Pokemon is easily captured, giving Ash his second Alola Pokemon. Ash calls the Pokemon out, and just as Lily said, the Rockruff is no longer paralyzed and looks good as new, bright and happy as well. Meanwhile, one of the other Pokemon runs back at the group. They believe it to be one of the Rockruff, but it actually turned out to be an Eevee. Hal notices that this was the weird-looking Pokemon from before. The Pokemon seems to have a wild, shaggy hairstyle. It looks really interesting, so Hal battles it with his Pichu. But the Eevee proves itself to be very strong. It knocks Pichu around easily, but it winds up becoming paralyzed through Pichu static. This slows it down and weakens it to the point that Hal can throw a Pokeball to easily catch it. Fumbling through his bag, he winds up grabbing a dive ball to capture the Pokemon. Hal notices that his Eevee is a bit different from the others he's seen before. In addition to the shaggy hair, it also has heart shapes at the end of its tail. He's never seen this before, so he figures he'll ask his grandfather about it once he returns. Nevertheless, the girls congratulate Hal and Ash on their new captures, as now everyone has 3 Pokemon. Hala returns to Melemele Island the following morning, and the kids are all waiting for him. Once he arrives, Hal wastes no time in asking him about his Eevee. Hala lets him know that the heart pattern on Eevee's tail means that it's a female, though he isn't sure what the shaggy hair is all about. He assumes it's just overgrown and needs to be cut. He offers to give it a haircut later that day. Meanwhile, he asks how all their trials went. The group explains how Celine has decided not to take part in the Island Challenge, but that Ash and Hal were both successful and earned their Normalium Z. With this, Hala states that they are now free to face him in their grand trials. Ash really wants to battle first, and the ever-relaxed Hal is fine with this. Hala would have preferred to see how his grandson had improved sooner rather than later, but he relents and agrees to take on Ash. Part of him is also rather interested in seeing how the non-Alola native will fare. Hala tells him that this battle will be more similar to gym battles that he is familiar with. They will use 3 Pokemon each, and the winner will be whoever takes out all of the other Pokemon. Ash agrees to the terms, and the two head to the battlefield. The battle begins, and Hala starts with his Mankey, and Ash sends out his brand new Rockruff. Rockruff immediately growls upon sight of Mankey. The others are surprised by Ash's choice of a rock type, with a type disadvantage, but Ash seems confident. He has Rockruff start with Rock Throw, pelting Mankey with a flurry of rocks. Hala tells Mankey to fight back and destroy the rocks with multiple karate chops, which it does. Ash commands Rockruff to use Tackle, and Hala orders his Mankey to use Focus Energy. Tackle strikes, but Mankey is able to get off the Focus Energy as well. Hala orders a Karate Chop, and Ash has Rockruff stop it with Bite. This causes Mankey to flinch, and Ash can order another close-range Rock Throw, sending Mankey flying. Ash calls for another tackle and Hala a karate chop. The Pokemon collide and both wind up knocking each other out. Ash praises Rewrote for taking Mankey down and sends Litten in next. Hala, meanwhile, sends in a Crabrawler. Ash is impressed, having not seen the Pokemon before. Hala commands a power-up punch, while Ash has Litten use Fire Fang. Litten bites down on Crabrawler's claw with flame-coated teeth, but this barely stops Crabrawler as it gets the punch off, raising its attack. Ash tries to have Litten keep his distance and orders an Ember, but Crabrawler counters perfectly with Bubble Beam. Hala orders another power punch which strikes Litten harder than before. Ash knows Ember isn't a good option, so he commands Litten to try Fire Fang again, telling Litten to avoid Crabrawler's punches. Thankfully, the kitten is very fast and can manage to avoid a few attacks while landing a Fire Fang, which actually burns Crabrawler. With this weakening Crabrawler's attack strength, Hala figures he has only one option to take Litten down. Okay, Ash, I think it's time I showed you the strength of a kahuna. Ash becomes confused before Hala raises his arm into the air and strikes a pose, and his Crabrawler does the same. He calls out the Z move, All Out Pummeling. Ash freezes in utter horror before he remembers that he can use Z moves with Litten too. He decides to strike back with his own Z move. Ash does the same pose Kukui showed them earlier with Litten, following along, and he orders Breakneck Blitz. This isn't how Ash planned things, but he has no choice now. Crabrawler fires off a series of energy punches directly at Litten, who does his best to use his speed to avoid the attack. He dashes through a fist-shaped ball of energy before slamming into Crabrawler, knocking it out. Litten lands on his feet, but is panting heavily, clearly exhausted. Hala praises Ash, stating that he is clearly a force to be reckoned with. But things end now. Hala sends in a Hariyama. Ash knows that Litten is exhausted, but tries to make do with what he can. He orders a Fire Fang, but a single knockoff defeats Litten. Ash praises Litten for doing so well and using a Z move for the first time. Pikachu is Ash's last choice, and he sends him in right away. He orders a Thunderbolt as soon as Pikachu enters the field. Hala tells Hariyama to block it, which he attempts to do, but still winds up taking a huge amount of damage. Hala commands Hariyama to use Arm Thrust, but Pikachu dodges with Quick Attack. At Ash's command, he then strikes Hariyama's legs with Iron Tail, causing the huge brute to topple over. Ash really wishes he hadn't used his Z move so early, as it would be perfect for right now, but this just gives him a note on how to better work with them in the future. For right now, he tells Pikachu to use Electro Ball, which strikes Hariyama. Hala decides to go all out and tells Hariyama to use Close Combat. He's able to successfully strike Pikachu and do a lot of damage, but it isn't enough to take Pikachu down, so a final Thunderbolt defeats Hariyama, giving Ash the win. Hala congratulates Ash, telling him that he can tell he's an impressive battler. It's no wonder he won the Kalos League in this universe. He then awards him with a Phytinium Z. Ash thanks Hala for the second Z Crystal and says that he'll treasure it. Next, Hala tells Hao that they can start their battle. This confuses Hao, as he was sure his grandfather would want to rest his Pokemon, but Hala informs him that he brought more Pokemon with him than just the 3 he battled Ash with, as he knew they'd both be ready for a battle with him. Hao confidently accepts the challenge then. Seeing how well Ash did with mostly newly obtained Pokemon, Hao thinks he may not actually need to even rely on Celine's Pokemon for this. He sends out his Pichu, and Hala sends in a Machop. But before a single attack can even be commanded, a smokescreen shrouds the battlefield. Everyone begins coughing, confused on what is happening. Out of nowhere, random sludge attacks start flying toward the group, nearly striking them. Thankfully, they all manage to just barely avoid the attacks. Ash finds this scene familiar. He calls out to Celine and Hao to send out their flying types to blow away the smoke, which they do. The smog is blown away, revealing a group of Team Skullgrunts. Hala is furious over this and demands to know what they're doing. The Skullgrunts simply explain that they're acting out on their promise to ruin Ash and his friend's Island Challenge. They say that they would have made it earlier to stop Ash's battle, but they forgot where the battle was being held. Nevertheless, they can at least stop Hao's battle. They order another sludge attack onto Hala's Machop, but the attack is blocked by Meadow. Celine angrily yells at the grunts, demanding that they leave. "No way," the grunts respond, firing off another sludge. Celine sends out Ariel to block the attack with Bubble Beam. Celine is furious now. "Why are you doing this? Why do you want to disrupt the Island Challenge like this?" "What do you even care? Are you even an Island Challenger?" the female grunt yells back. "I may not be taking on the Island Challenge, but I have respect for my region's rite of passage. Just because I'm not participating doesn't mean I don't understand the importance of it." Cute. Too bad we don't care. So land it, Flame Burst. Another grunt calls out this attack, which is fired at Hala, but Papillon destroys it with Bubble Beam. I refuse to allow you to interrupt an island challenge. I don't know why you're doing this, but I don't care. Right now, my mission is to stop you. I'll stop all of you Team Skull brutes. Metal, Revelation Dance, Aerial, Bubble Beam. Celine's Pokemon fire their attacks at the Team Skull grunts, who retaliate with their own attacks. Ash has Pikachu fire off a Thunderbolt at the last minute to help Celine out, and they wind up blasting the Team Skull Pokemon away, knocking them all out. With no Pokemon left to battle with, the grunts return their Pokemon, but proclaim that this won't be the end of them and that they'll be back to stop the island challenge no matter what it takes. With the ruffians gone, the attention is returned to the battle. Hao thanks Celine for saving their battle, and Hala can't help but be impressed. My Celine, I've never seen such passion from you, and to think you aren't taking on the island challenge. Still, I must thank you for stopping those guys and protecting the sanctity of our tradition. Thank you, Kahuna Hala. I just don't get those guys and what their deal is. But they're gone now, so you guys can get back to your battle. Hala nods, as does Hao. Hao starts things off by commanding Thundershock from his Pichu, but Hala doesn't even command his Pokemon to dodge. The attack lands and Machop barely seems phased. Hao is confused, as are Ash, Celine, and Lily. Hao, your Pichu's attacks aren't very strong yet. Have you been training your Pokemon? What? Of course I have, he yells back. But Hala seems unconvinced. Oh really? Then can your Pokemon handle this? Hala raises up his Z-Ring into the air. Everyone is shocked, and Hao can barely believe his eyes. Hala's going to use his Z-move already? The battle only just started. Nevertheless, Hala goes in for the attack. He strikes the pose for all-out pummeling, along with Machop, and Pichu is struck with a flurry of punches. The small mouse stands no chance, and is taken down after being pummeled into the ground. Hao is stunned. He can't believe his grandfather used his Z-move so early. He's already down one Pokemon after only getting one move off. Hala smirks from where he stands, beckoning his grandson to send in his next Pokemon. The other kids are likewise surprised on the sidelines. Lily says that this must have been Hala's strategy, to throw Hao off his game right at the start of the battle. Ash is concerned as he knows a new trainer like Hao wouldn't be as easily able to recover from such a rough start. And just as they predicted, Hao appears frozen, like he doesn't know what his next move should be. He can't use his newly caught Eevee against a bunch of fighting types. Rowlet would be a good matchup, but Hao doubts he could take down 3 of his grandfather's well-trained Pokemon by himself. He thought he could get by without this, but it seems he has no choice. He pulls out a netball out of his pocket, and Celine knows what's coming. Honey, I choose you. Celine's Cutiefly enters the battlefield, clearly eager to fight. Oh, a Cutiefly? An unexpected Pokemon from you, Hao, but a great choice to battle me with. Hala says, unaware that the Pokemon his grandson is using isn't even his own. Ash and Lily, on the other hand, are confused. Ash asks Celine why Hao has her Cutiefly, and she says that she let him borrow her for his grand trial. They knew she helped him out with his Verdant Cavern trial, but didn't expect she'd also loan him Pokemon for his grand trial, as it seemed to be more of an individual experience. But they're sure it's no big deal, and are excited to see the battle. Hao orders for Honey to use Fairy Wind, and the attack does big damage. Hala orders a Karate Chop to retaliate, but thanks to her speed, Honey is able to avoid the attack quickly. Hala orders a Focus Energy, and Hao simply continues with Fairy Wind, wearing Machop down even further. Hala then orders Revenge, a move that would normally deal a lot of damage with Machop being so weakened, but the Cutiefly's type allows her to heavily resist the attack and take barely any damage. Hao commands a Draining Kiss to finish off Machop and also heal up Honey a little. Hala commends his grandson on being able to recover from that quick early defeat and get a win. He compliments Hao on catching a Pokemon that can easily take on his team. Huh? Oh yeah, Honey isn't my Pokemon, she's actually Celine's, but I guess I can understand the mix-up. At this, Hala goes silent. His expression changes from one of pride to sternness. What? You're using a Pokemon that isn't even yours in a grand trial? Your very first grand trial? At this, Hao and the other kids are confused. Hao asks if there's a rule against borrowing Pokemon for battles, since he's never heard that he couldn't before. Hao explains that there's no rule against borrowing Pokemon for battles, including grand trials. But he is still disappointed that Hao wouldn't use his own Pokemon for this battle. He was hoping for a battle with his grandson, without him having to rely on anything but his own team. Hao is confused though, as he can't see what the big deal is. But the battle must go on. So Hala sends out his next Pokemon, a Makuhita. Lily notes that Makuhita is the pre-evolved form of Hariyama, the Pokemon Hala used to battle Ash. Celine sighs in relief that her Cutiefly didn't have to battle the stronger evolved form. Hao orders a Fairy Wind, but Hala counters with a Fake Out, which prevents Honey from attacking. But Hao doesn't let this phase him, and he commands Stun Spore. This paralyzes Makuhita, and Hao is sure he's got this victory in the bag. But Hala smirks and orders Arm Thrust. Makuhita becomes surrounded by a red ore and launches forward with his attacks, and despite the attack not being very effective, it seems to do a lot of damage. Honey is knocked back, but is able to recover. Lily and Ash realize that Makuhita must have guts as its ability. Celine is shocked by this, but hopes Hao will find a way to pull through. Hao goes back to using the long-ranged Fairy Wind, which does a lot of damage. But Hala calls for a powerful Force Palm. The attack deals a good amount of damage, but it's still not enough to take Honey down. Hala calls for another Arm Thrust, but this time Makuhita is unable to move because of paralysis. Hao takes this chance to call for a Draining Kiss, which defeats Makuhita. Celine cheers for her Pokemon's second victory, and Ash remarks that Hala only has one Pokemon left. Hala sends out his last Pokemon, a Crabrawler. But this Crabrawler seems different from the one Ash battled. It is very lax and calm, unlike the rowdy one from the previous battle. Hao is ready to end this battle and orders a Fairy Wind. However, Hala doesn't command the Pokemon to dodge, and it just stands there and takes the attack. And yet, it seems to take almost no damage. Hao and Honey are so confused by this that the Cutiefly stops attacking, thinking her move must not be doing anything. And Hala then calls for a Crab Hammer. The giant enemy crab jumps up and slams the tiny bug into the ground with its big, meaty claws, knocking it out with a single hit. Hao and the other kids are stunned by the Pokemon's power, and with this, Hao only has one Pokemon left he can use. He sends out his Rowlet, who gains a fierce look in his eyes the moment he sees Hala. He knows this is about to be a serious battle. Hala commands a Power-Up Punch, while Hao has Rowlet use Leafage. Rowlet's attack lands, but once again, it's as if Crabrawler barely noticed the attack. The crab punches Rowlet with a huge force, slamming it into the ground. Hao is in awe of the Pokemon's strength. Hala orders the same attack again, and it lands with an even harder hit. Hao calls for Peck, and this close-range strike actually succeeds in knocking the opponent back. Crabrawler actually seems to spring to life at this hit, and starts trying to hit Rowlet with more punches. The small bird is hit back, but this is when Hao pulls out his Z Crystal and puts it on his Z Ring. Everyone already knows what is coming. Rowlet and Hao strike the pose for Breakneck Blitz, and Rowlet slams into Crabrawler at an incredible speed. The attack launches Crabrawler off of the battle platform and into the ground. In the air, Hao calls for an immediate Razor Leaf follow-up attack, and this succeeds in knocking Crabrawler out. With this, Hao has won the battle, and he celebrates with Rowlet. Ash, Celine, and Lily applaud Hao and congratulate him for his win. Hala approaches Hao, a stern look on his face. Hao is at first nervous, but Hala soon smiles and congratulates his grandson for the win. He says that Hao did well for commanding a Pokemon that wasn't his own for most of the battle, but he says he hopes he'll work just as well with his own Pokemon from now on. Hao says that he certainly will, and Hala gives him his Fightinium Z. Hao thanks his grandfather for the battle, but Hala says that he has one more thing to give Hao. Confused, Hao asks what it is, and Hala gives him a Great Ball. He says that this is the Pokeball for the Crabrawler that he just battled him with. He caught it recently after noticing how its personality was similar to Hao's. Lax most of the time, but serious when it needs to be. He feels it would be better off with Hao, so he offers it to the young boy, and of course Hao accepts. And now he has 4 Pokemon. At this moment, Professor Kukui shows up. He approaches the group asking how the Grand Trials went. Hala happily states that Ash and Hao just passed their Grand Trials, and are ready to move on to the next part of the Island Challenge. Kukui says that this is perfect timing, as he just got a call to head to Akala Island for some business, and he figured he'd offer to bring the kids along with him if they were ready. They all agree that they are ready, and so they all make their way to the boat. Hala tells them to be careful, since he was just on Akala Island and knows there are Team Skullgrunts causing mischief. In fact, Team Skull is the reason he was recently called over to the island to stop a lot of them from messing up the island trials. At this, Celine frowns, upset to hear that Team Skull is doing this across the other islands as well. While boarding the boat, Kukui asks more about the battles, and Lily mentions that things would have been better had those Team Skull guys not showed up and tried to ruin things. Kukui mentions that he'd actually been hearing from many people on Alola's other islands that Team Skull had been causing problems for island challengers there as well. Celine becomes furious and begins yelling that she doesn't get why these people are so insistent on messing up the island challenge. She says that the challenger shouldn't have to deal with it, and that if she sees any trace of Team Skull moving forward, she'll be sure to take them down for the sake of the island challenge. Lily comments that Celine seems very serious about this, and Celine tells the others that at first she didn't know what she wanted to do with her journey, but now she does. She'll figure out why Team Skull is causing trouble for Alola, and stop them from ruining anyone else's island challenges, so Alola's traditions can continue on in peace. The others approve of her in this goal and tell her that they'll do whatever they can to support her. The kids then board the boat and wave goodbye to Melemele Island, Akala being the next stop on their journey.